David Reed watched the stars blur past the window and wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. 3 months ago, he had been teaching history at the Academy on Mars. Now he wore the uniform of Earth's first diplomatic envoy to an alien empire, and his hands would not stop shaking. "You look nervous," Amy Walsh said from across the cabin. She was cleaning her sidearm, which seemed pointless since they were supposed to be diplomats, not soldiers, but Amy had never been good at pretending. "I am nervous," David admitted. "We have no idea what we're walking into. That's why I'm here." Amy snapped the weapon back together with practiced ease. "To make sure you walk back out." The ship hummed around them, a gentle reminder that they were no longer in human space. 2 days ago, they had crossed into territory controlled by the Korvath Empire, and everything had changed. The escort ships that flanked them now were twice the size of their vessel, sleek and dangerous-looking. Their crews had been polite but distant, as if humans were an interesting curiosity rather than equals. Dr. Neil Foster burst into the cabin, his tablet clutched against his chest. "You need to see this," he said, breathless. "I've been analyzing the data from our escorts." "What data?" David asked. "Biometric readings, gravity specifications, environmental controls." Neil thrust the tablet at them. "The Korvath homeworld has 60% of Earth's gravity. Most of the species in their empire come from similar low-gravity worlds." Amy stopped cleaning her weapon. "What does that mean?" "It means they're going to be slow," Neil said. "Compared to us, anyway. Their reaction times, their movement speed, everything. They evolved in an easier environment." David felt something cold settle in his stomach. "And they have no idea. Why would they?" Neil shrugged. "Earth is the first high-gravity world they've encountered with intelligent life. To them, we probably look fragile, soft, weak." The intercom crackled. "Human delegation, please report to the observation deck. High Arbiter Thrall wishes to speak with you before we arrive at Korvath Prime." They found Thrall waiting for them, his tall frame silhouetted against the viewport. He was humanoid enough to be relatable, but alien enough to be unsettling. His skin had a faint blue tint and his eyes were too large, too dark. When he moved, it was with a fluid grace that seemed almost practiced. "Captain Reed," Thrall said, his voice deep and resonant. "I trust your accommodations have been satisfactory?" "Very much so, High Arbiter. Thank you for your hospitality. It is tradition." Thrall gestured to the viewport where a blue-green world was growing larger. "Korvath Prime, the heart of the Empire. Beautiful, is it not?" "It is," David agreed. "Your people have been watched for some time," Thrall continued. 50 years, in fact. We do not make contact lightly. The galaxy is vast and not all species are suited for civilization." Amy stiffened beside him, but David kept his expression neutral. "And what have you concluded about humanity?" "That you are interesting." Thrall's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Violent, certainly. Your history is filled with conflict, but also creative. Adaptable, you have potential, provided you can prove yourselves worthy." "Prove ourselves?" David asked carefully. "All species must pass the proving before joining the Galactic Assembly. It is tradition, established millennia ago by the founders, a demonstration of value, of capability, of what your people can contribute to the greater whole." Sub-Commander Dren appeared behind Thrall, his expression less friendly. "Most species demonstrate scientific achievement," he said. "Advanced technology, unique abilities. What will Earth show us? Your weapons? Your capacity for destruction?" "We were hoping to show cooperation," David said. "Partnership. Mutual benefit." Dren made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Words are cheap, human. The galaxy respects strength, not speeches." "That will be all, Sub-Commander," Thrall said quietly. Dren bowed and withdrew, but not before shooting David a look of unmistakable contempt. "You must forgive Dren," Thrall said. "The Korvath have been the dominant military power in this region for 3,000 years. We are not accustomed to uncertainty, and your people represent an unknown factor. We're not here to threaten anyone," Amy said, speaking for the first time. "No?" Thrall studied her with those two dark eyes. "You wear a weapon to a diplomatic meeting. I'm security. And yet you seem so confident, so relaxed." Thrall moved closer, and David realized the alien was studying them the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. "Our scans indicate humans have denser bone structure than most species. Heavier musculature. Your cardiovascular system is remarkably efficient. Tell me, is this common among your people?" "We're pretty standard for Earth," David said carefully. "Fascinating." Thrall turned back to the viewport. Tomorrow you will meet the council. They will observe your proving. I suggest you prepare well. First impressions matter greatly in galactic politics. After Thrall left, the three humans stood in silence for a long moment. I don't like this, Amy said finally. This proving thing, it feels like a trap. It's a test, Neil corrected. Every species has to take it. We just need to figure out what they expect from us. David thought about what Dren had said. Words are cheap. The galaxy respects strength. He thought about Earth's gravity, about humanity's violent history, about the way Thrall had moved with that slow, graceful precision. They're going to make us fight, he said quietly. What? Think about it. They value military strength. They see us as violent. They want to know if we're dangerous or just loud. David looked at Amy. Can you beat one of them? Amy considered the question seriously. If they move the way Thrall does? Yes, easily, but that might be the wrong answer. Why? Because if we're too good, we become a threat. If we're too weak, we're worthless. We need to find the middle ground. Neil was staring at his tablet again, scrolling through data. There might not be a middle ground, he said softly. If I'm reading this right, the average Korvath warrior has reaction times about 3 times slower than a trained human soldier. And Amy's not average. She's Special Forces. Former Special Forces, Amy corrected. The point stands. If they test us in combat, we're going to surprise them. The question is whether that surprise will be welcome or terrifying. David looked out at Korvath Prime, at the alien world that would determine humanity's future among the stars. Somewhere down there, decisions were being made about his species based on incomplete information and ancient traditions. The Korvath thought they knew what humans were capable of. They had no idea they were wrong. Then we'll show them the truth, David said. Whatever happens tomorrow, we represent Earth. We show them who we really are, and we let them decide if that's enough. Amy holstered her weapon and smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. Just promise me one thing. What? When this goes sideways, and it will go sideways, promise me you'll trust your instincts. Don't think like a diplomat. Think like a survivor. David wanted to argue, but something in Amy's tone stopped him. She had seen combat in the outer colonies, had survived situations that would have broken lesser people. If she was worried, he should be too. I promise, he said. The ship began its final approach to Korvath Prime, and David Reed, history teacher turned diplomat, prepared to make first contact with an empire that had no idea what humans truly were. The Grand Assembly Hall was nothing like David had imagined. He had expected something cold and clinical, all metal and glass like the space stations humanity built. Instead, he found himself in a vast chamber carved from living stone, with pillars that stretched up into shadows and walls covered in alien script that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. 40 species were represented here, maybe more. David saw beings that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of crystal, and some that defied easy description. They filled the tiered seating that ringed the central arena, watching the human delegation with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. Ambassador Ruth Delgado walked beside David, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and her face showing nothing but calm confidence. She had been a negotiator during the Mars independence talks 20 years ago, and she had learned long ago how to hide her fear. Remember the briefing, she murmured to David. We are here to observe and learn. We speak only when spoken to. We accept their traditions with grace. Even if those traditions involve getting someone killed, Amy asked from behind them. Especially then, Ruth said firmly. We cannot afford to appear weak or difficult. Not on our first day. A being descended from the highest tier of seats, moving with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. It was ancient, that much was clear. Its scales were pale and worn, and its eyes held a depth that spoke of centuries of experience. I am Council Speaker Vorn, it said, its voice somehow both harsh and melodic. I welcome humanity to the Galactic Assembly. You are the youngest species to stand before this council in 3 generations. Your youth makes you either very promising or very foolish. Today we will learn which. We are honored by this opportunity, Ruth said, bowing slightly. Honor is earned, not given, Vorn replied. The proving exists because words alone tell us nothing. Any species can make promises. Any civilization can claim nobility. We require demonstration. We require proof. Another figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the arena. This one was Korvath, but larger than Thrall, with scars crossing its face and arms. It wore armor that looked ceremonial but functional, and when it moved, David could see the careful control of a trained warrior. War Master Quinn, Vorn announced, victor of the Kelth Rebellion, defender of the Outer Rim. He will observe your proving and judge its worth. Quinn studied the humans with open disdain. I have seen your history, he said. You kill each other over resources, over ideology, over insults. You have barely left your own planet, yet already you divide yourselves into nations and tribes. Why should we allow such a fractured, violent species into our assembly? Ruth stepped forward. We do not claim to be perfect. Our history is indeed filled with conflict, but it is also filled with growth, with learning, with the hard-won wisdom that comes from mistakes. We have learned that cooperation brings more than conflict. That understanding builds more than fear. That different voices create stronger harmony than any single song. Pretty words, Quinn said. I asked for demonstration, not poetry. Then we will demonstrate, Ruth said calmly. Vorn raised one clawed hand. The proving takes many forms. Some species show us their technology. Others display unique biological capabilities. Some offer artistic or cultural achievements. What will humanity demonstrate? Ruth had prepared for this. They had debated for months about what to show the council. Scientific advances seemed pointless when these aliens had been traveling between stars for millennia. Cultural achievements were too subjective. In the end, they had decided on something simple. We offer adaptability, Ruth said. The ability to learn, to change, to overcome obstacles through creativity and determination. These are the traits that allowed us to survive on Earth. And these are the traits we believe make us valuable to the galactic community. Adaptability, Quinn repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of that answer. How does one demonstrate such an abstract concept? Through trial, Vorn said. War Master, you wish to test their claims of strength. Propose a challenge, Quinn smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Combat, single combat. Let one of these humans face one of our warriors. 3 minutes. If they survive, they demonstrate resilience. If they fight well, they demonstrate capability. If they win, they demonstrate worth. Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Some seemed excited by the prospect. Others looked concerned. David noticed that several species were leaning forward in their seats, clearly interested in seeing how humans would respond. Combat is acceptable, Ruth said, though David could see the tension in her shoulders. But I would ask that we establish clear rules. This is meant to be a demonstration, not an execution. Of course, Quinn said smoothly. Traditional Korvath trial rules. Blunted weapons. No strikes to vital areas with intent to kill. The match ends when one fighter yields, is rendered unconscious, or 3 minutes elapse. We are not savages. I'll do it, David heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. Ruth's eyes widened in shock. Amy looked like she wanted to tackle him and carry him out of the hall. Neil just stared. David, no, Ruth said quietly. It has to be me, David said. You're the ambassador. Amy is security, which makes her look like we're using a soldier. Neil is a scientist. I'm just a diplomatic aide, expendable, and if I fail, it doesn't compromise the mission. If you fail, you might die, Ruth hissed. Then I won't fail. David stepped forward before anyone could stop him. He looked up at Quinn, at Vorn, at the assembled representatives of 40 alien species. I accept the challenge, he said clearly. I will face your warrior. Quinn looked pleased. Excellent. I had hoped one of you would show courage. Breck attend. A Korvath warrior stepped into the arena. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks and a chest that seemed as wide as a door. He moved with that same slow grace David had noticed in Thrall, but there was power behind it. This was someone who had trained for decades, who knew exactly how dangerous he was. Breck has been a warrior for 20 years, Quinn announced. He is strong, skilled, and has never been defeated in ceremonial combat. He will be your opponent, human. David swallowed hard. Beside him, Amy leaned in close. Listen to me, she whispered urgently. He's going to be slow. Slower than anyone you've ever fought. His movements will seem obvious. Trust your instincts. Your body knows what to do even if your mind doesn't believe it. I'm not a fighter, David whispered back. You're human, Amy said. That's enough. An attendant brought weapons. 2 blunted blades, ceremonial things with wrapped handles and dulled edges. They were still metal, still capable of breaking bones if used with enough force. David took one and immediately felt how heavy it was, how awkward. Breck took his weapon and spun it casually, making it whistle through the air. The gesture was clearly meant to intimidate, and it worked. David's mouth went dry. 3 minutes, Vorn announced. Begin when ready. David moved to the center of the arena. Breck followed, circling him slowly. The Korvath warrior was studying him, looking for weaknesses, for signs of training. David had no idea what Breck was seeing, but he doubted it was impressive. You seem afraid, human, Breck said. His voice was surprisingly gentle. There is no shame in yielding before we begin. I'm not afraid of you, David lied. Then you are foolish. Breck raised his weapon. But at least you're brave. I will try to make this quick, Breck moved. To David's surprise, he seemed to be moving in slow motion. The warrior's blade came around in a wide arc, telegraphing the strike so clearly that David had time to think about 3 different responses before choosing one. He stepped back and the blade passed a foot in front of his chest. Breck's eyes widened slightly. He attacked again, faster this time, a combination of strikes that David assumed was supposed to be overwhelming. But each movement was so clear, so obvious that David found himself moving without thinking. Step back, step right, duck under the 3rd strike, dodge the 4th, you have trained, Breck said, sounding less certain. A little, David admitted. He had taken self-defense classes at the academy, but that was years ago. Nothing that should matter against a warrior with 20 years of experience. But Breck was slow. They were all slow. The entire gallery was watching in stunned silence as David avoided every attack, not through skill but through simple reaction time. His body was responding to threats before his mind fully registered them, the product of millions of years of evolution on a planet where hesitation meant death. Breck increased his intensity. The strikes came faster, harder, and David stopped thinking entirely. He let his instincts take over, let his body move the way it had been designed to move. He blocked, dodged, countered. The blade in his hand felt more natural now, an extension of his arm rather than a foreign object. And then Breck made a mistake. Sweat ran down Breck's face and dripped onto the arena floor. David could see the warrior's breathing had changed, becoming heavier, more labored. 2 minutes had passed, maybe more. The Korvath had been attacking continuously, and David had been defending, waiting for an opening that never came. Around them, the assembled aliens had gone from murmuring to complete silence. David could feel their eyes on him, could sense their confusion. This was not how the proving was supposed to go. The human should have been overwhelmed by now, beaten or yielding. Instead, he moved like water, flowing around every strike. You are better than you appeared, Breck said between breaths. I apologize for underestimating you. Don't apologize yet, David said. We still have time left, Breck smiled, though it looked tired. True. Then let me show you something our warriors learn in advanced training. Perhaps it will be enough. The warrior's stance changed. He held his blade differently now, more compact, more controlled. When he moved, it was with a precision that David had not seen before. The strikes came from unexpected angles, with rhythm that made them harder to predict. David found himself giving ground. His arms were starting to ache from the constant blocking. The blade was heavy, and while he could track Breck's movements easily enough, he was not trained for extended combat. He was a teacher, not a soldier. Eventually, his body would fail him. Breck pressed the advantage, sensing weakness. He launched a combination attack. 3 quick strikes followed by a spinning slash that came from the side. David blocked the first 3 but had to duck under the 4th, dropping to one knee. The blade whistled over his head, close enough that he felt the air move. The gallery gasped. David rolled forward, coming up behind Breck, and for a moment he had a clear shot at the warrior's back. He could have struck, could have scored a point or ended the match. But something stopped him. This was supposed to be a demonstration, not a humiliation. He needed to survive, not dominate. He stepped back instead, giving Breck room to recover. The warrior turned, and there was something new in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or fear. David could not tell. You could have struck me, Breck said. We're not here to make enemies, David replied. No. Breck raised his blade in a formal salute. You are here to prove yourselves. And you have done so. I yield the match to you, human. Your skill honors both our peoples. David started to lower his weapon, relief flooding through him. 3 minutes must have passed by now. The trial was over. They had succeeded. He had survived against a trained warrior and even earned the Korvath's respect. Everything was going to be fine. That was when Breck's blade slipped from his hand. Later, David would learn that Korvath's ceremony required the warrior to release his weapon when yielding, allowing it to fall to the ground as a sign of peaceful surrender. It was a gesture of trust, of vulnerability, but Breck's hands were slick with sweat, and his grip was not as controlled as it should have been. Instead of falling straight down, the blade tumbled through the air, spinning end over end, directly toward David's face. The blade was blunted, but it was still metal, still moving with enough force to shatter bone if it hit him wrong. David's brain registered the threat in the fragment of a second. Sharp end coming at his left eye. Angular velocity suggests impact in 0.08 seconds. No time to dodge. No time to raise his own weapon to deflect. His hands moved on their own. They snapped up, fingers spread, and caught the blade between his palms like someone catching a prayer. The impact stung, sent shockwaves up his arms, but his grip held. The blade stopped rotating. Its edge pressed between his hands, 1 inch from his face. The gallery went completely silent. David stood there, holding the blade, trying to understand what had just happened. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. His hands were shaking, but the blade was secure, harmless now, just a piece of metal between his palms. He looked at Breck. The warrior stood frozen, his expression caught somewhere between shock and horror. His mouth was open, but no words came out. David lowered the blade carefully and held it out to Breck. "I believe you dropped this," he said quietly. Breck did not take it. He was staring at David like he had just seen someone walk through a wall. Around them, the gallery erupted in noise. Aliens were standing, gesturing, their voices rising in a dozen different languages. David caught fragments of translation through his earpiece. "Impossible. Did you see that? What are they?" High Arbiter Thrall stood from his seat in the gallery. His face had gone very still, very careful. "That is not possible," he said clearly. "No species has those reflexes. The calculation alone should have taken longer than the time available." War Master Quinn was leaning forward, his earlier contempt replaced by intense focus. "Play it back," he ordered. "I want to see it again." A holographic display appeared in the air above the arena, showing the last few seconds in slow motion. David watched himself catch the blade and even slowed down. The movement looked impossibly fast. His hands had moved in a blur too quick for the eye to fully track. 0.08 seconds, Vorn said, his ancient voice cutting through the chaos. "From threat recognition to response completion. I have never seen anything like it." "Neither have I," Quinn admitted. "In 3,000 years of Korvath military history, our fastest recorded reaction time is 0.23 seconds. And that was from our greatest warrior prophet whose speed was considered divine." Thrall descended from his seat, moving toward David with slow, careful steps. He stopped a few feet away, studying the human with those two dark eyes. "Captain Reed," he said formally, "are you enhanced? Cybernetic implants? Genetic modification?" "No," David said. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "I'm completely natural." "Impossible. I'm not special," David insisted. "I'm just a regular human. I'm not even particularly athletic." That caused more murmurs. Ruth was making her way down to the arena floor, her face pale but composed. Amy was right behind her, looking both proud and worried. Neil brought up the rear, his tablet already out and recording everything. "If you are not exceptional among your people," Vorn said slowly, "then this is a species-wide trait?" "I guess so," David said. "I mean, some humans are faster than others, but we can all catch things. It's not that hard." "Not that hard," Quinn repeated. He laughed, though it sounded strained. "Human, do you understand what you just did? You caught a projectile moving at terminal velocity based on reflexes alone. You calculated trajectory, acceleration, and impact point in less time than it takes most species to blink. And you say it is not hard." David looked at his hands, at the faint red marks where the blade had pressed into his palms. "We catch baseballs," he said weakly. "That's basically the same thing." "Baseballs?" Thrall asked. "A sport. We throw small objects at high speeds and catch them for fun. Children do it." The silence that followed was different from before. It was not shocked or confused. It was calculating. David could see the aliens reassessing everything they thought they knew about humanity. He could see them running simulations in their minds, imagining what a species with these reflexes could do in combat, in sports, in emergency situations. "What else can you do?" Quinn asked quietly. I don't understand the question. What other abilities do your people possess that you consider normal, but we would consider extraordinary? David thought about it. He thought about Amy's marksmanship scores, about Neil's ability to work for 20 hours straight, when he was excited about research, about Ruth's capacity to memorize entire treaties word for word. He thought about human athletes, soldiers, surgeons. He thought about all the things humanity did every day without thinking about them. I don't know, he admitted. We're just human. Everything we do seems normal to us. Ruth finally reached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hi, Arbiter Thrall, Council Speaker Vorn, War Master Quinn. I believe we have successfully demonstrated humanity's capacity for adaptation and survival. We would be honored to answer any questions you might have about our people. Oh, we have questions, Thrall said. His voice was soft but intense. Many questions. But first, I think we need to reconvene the council. This changes everything. Changes what? David asked. Thrall looked at him, and for the first time since meeting the alien, David saw genuine emotion in those dark eyes. It might have been fear. It might have been excitement. It might have been both. Your people evolved on what we would classify as a death world, Thrall said. High gravity. Dangerous predators. Extreme environmental variation. You are not just intelligent beings who happen to survive. You are apex predators who learn to think, and we just invited you to join the galactic community without understanding what that means. We're not predators, David protested. No, Quinn gestured at the blade still lying on the arena floor. You caught a weapon meant to harm you and turned it into a gift. You fought one of our finest warriors and showed mercy when you could have shown dominance. You are absolutely predators, human. You are just predators who chose to be something more. He stepped forward and placed his fist over his heart, in what David recognized as a Korvath gesture of respect. I withdraw my earlier contempt. Humanity has proven itself worthy of the Assembly. The only question now is whether the Assembly is ready for humanity. David looked around the vast chamber, at 40 species watching him with new eyes, and realized that catching that blade had been the worst thing he could have done. They had wanted to see humanity demonstrate value. Instead, they had seen humanity demonstrate power, and power without context was terrifying. Thrall sat alone in his private quarters and watched the recording for the 37th time. Each viewing revealed new details that made his calculations more disturbing. The human's pupils had dilated 0.02 seconds before the blade began falling, suggesting threat recognition at a subconscious level. The muscle groups in his arms had engaged with perfect synchronization, no wasted movement. And the catch itself had been executed with a precision that should have required years of training. Yet the human claimed it was instinctive. A knock interrupted his analysis. Enter, he called. War Master Quinn stepped inside, his armor replaced by simple robes. He looked older without the ceremonial plating and tired. We need to talk, he said without preamble, about the humans, about what they represent. Quinn sat down heavily. I have fought in 16 major campaigns across 40 years. I have seen species that breathe poison, others that can phase through solid matter, and some that communicate through electromagnetic pulses. But I have never seen anything like this. Thrall gestured at the holographic display where David Reed caught the blade in perfect clarity. Our scientists have been running simulations. For a Korvath to achieve this level of response time, we would need cybernetic enhancements throughout the nervous system, predictive AI algorithms, and possibly precognitive abilities. The human required none of these. He simply reacted. It's the gravity, Quinn said. It has to be. I believe you are correct. Thrall pulled up comparative data. Earth's gravity is 1.68 times that of Korvath Prime. Their evolutionary pressures were correspondingly more severe. Slower organisms did not survive to reproduce. Those with faster reflexes, stronger muscles, more efficient cardiovascular systems, they were the ones who lived long enough to pass on their genes. For millions of years, Quinn added quietly. Yes. Generation after generation, selection favoring speed, strength, and durability. They did not choose this. They were forged by their environment into what we see today. Quinn stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at Korvath Prime below. Do you know what my first thought was when I saw Reed catch that blade? What? That we should never let humans develop a military fleet. That species is too dangerous to be armed. Thrall felt his pulse quicken. And now? Now I think that might be the worst possible response. Humans are dangerous, yes, but so are we. So are the Vaxel with their bioweapons. So are the Tren with their phase shift technology. Every species in the assembly has the capacity for violence. The question is not capability but intent. You think they can be trusted? Quinn turned back to face him. I think Reed could have killed Breck at any point in that match. I watched the footage in detail. There were at least 7 openings where a strike to Breck's throat or temple would have ended the fight immediately. Reed saw all of them. He chose not to use them. Mercy from a position of strength, Thrall mused. That is a rare quality. It's more than mercy. It's restraint, self-control, the ability to moderate one's own power. Quinn sat back down. These are not the qualities of a species we should fear. These are the qualities of a species we should recruit. The Council will not see it that way. Some will not, Quinn agreed. Sub-Commander Dren already came to me with concerns. He thinks humans are a threat to Korvath dominance. He wants them restricted to their home system until we understand them better. Thrall felt old anger stir in his chest. Dren has always been more concerned with pride than wisdom. He is not alone. At least a dozen species representatives have filed formal inquiries about humanity's military capabilities. They want to know how many humans exist, what weapons they possess, whether they have expansion intentions. Everyone is afraid. Are you afraid? Quinn considered the question seriously. Yes, but I'm also hopeful. Do you know how long it has been since the Outer Rim colonies had an effective defense against raiders? Decades, longer. The Scourge have been hitting our trade routes for 73 years. We cannot stop them because they move too fast, strike too quickly. Our response times are insufficient. Our ships arrive hours after the attack ends. Quinn leaned forward. But humans? Humans might be fast enough. Thrall saw where this was going. You want to recruit them as peacekeepers. I want to offer them a role that demonstrates their value while controlling how that value is expressed. Make them defenders rather than conquerors. Show the galaxy that humanity's strength can be a benefit, not a threat. And if they refuse, if they decide to pursue their own interests instead, then we will deal with it. But I think they will accept. Reed demonstrated restraint not because he is weak, but because he understands the political implications of his actions. That suggests a mature civilization, one capable of long-term thinking. Thrall was not entirely convinced, but he respected Quinn's judgment. The War Master had survived more battles than most species live to fight. If he saw potential in humanity, it was worth considering. I will speak with Reed privately, Thrall decided. I want to understand what they expect from Assembly membership, what they hope to gain, what they are willing to contribute. We need more information before making recommendations to the Council. Be careful, Quinn warned, not about the humans. They seem honest enough, but there are forces in the Assembly that will resist any change to the current power structure. If we push too hard for human integration, we risk fracturing the coalition. After Quinn left, Thrall sat in silence for a long time, thinking about deathworlds and evolutionary pressure and the unexpected consequences of first contact. Somewhere in the human delegation quarters, David Reed was probably sleeping, unaware that his reflexes had started a political crisis that would reshape galactic civilization. The next morning, Thrall arrived at the human quarters unannounced. He found Reed sitting alone in the common area, reading something on a datapad. The human looked up and immediately stood, clearly surprised. Hi, Arbiter. I was not expecting you. I prefer informal conversations when possible, Thrall said. May I sit? Of course. They sat across from each other and Thrall took a moment to study the human more carefully. Reed was not physically imposing by human standards, according to the biological data they had collected. Average height, average build, no obvious enhancements. Yet he moved with a casual grace that Thrall now recognized as efficiency, every gesture precise and controlled without apparent effort. I came to ask you a question, Thrall said. Yesterday when you caught the blade, were you afraid? Reed seemed surprised by the question. Yes, very afraid. But you still moved to intercept it. I did not think about it. My body just reacted. By the time my brain caught up to what was happening, my hands were already moving. That is what concerns many in the Council. A species that reacts before thinking could be unpredictable, dangerous. Reed set down his datapad. Is this why you're here? To tell me that humans failed the proving? No, you passed spectacularly. Too spectacularly, perhaps. Thrall leaned back. The Council will vote on your membership tomorrow. I believe you will be accepted, though not unanimously. But I need to understand something first. What do humans want from the galaxy? I'm not qualified to speak for all humanity. Then speak for yourself. What do you want? Reed was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I want to learn. I want to see what other species have discovered, what they have created, what they know about the universe that we do not. I want humanity to be part of something larger than ourselves, to contribute to civilization rather than merely surviving in isolation. He met Thrall's eyes. And I want my people to be safe. To know that when we send ships out into the galaxy, they will return home. Noble goals, are they? I do not know anymore. Yesterday I thought we were just demonstrating competence. Today I realize we demonstrated threat. Everything has changed because I caught a falling weapon. Not everything, Thrall said gently. Your intentions remain the same. Your hopes for humanity remain the same. What has changed is the galaxy's perception of what you are capable of. That is not your fault. It feels like my fault. Then perhaps you understand the burden of power better than most. Thrall stood. Tomorrow the council will vote. Regardless of the outcome, I want you to know that I support humanity's inclusion in the assembly. War Master Quinn supports it as well. We believe your people have much to offer. And if others disagree, then we will negotiate, compromise, find common ground. That is what the assembly does. Thrall moved toward the door, then paused. One more question, Captain Reed. Are all humans like you? What do you mean? Your reflexes. Your capability. Is this standard for your species, or are you exceptional among your people? Reed actually laughed, though it sounded tired. High Arbiter. I teach history at an academy. I have not been in a fight since I was a teenager. My hobbies include reading and classical music. By human standards, I am completely ordinary. Unremarkable. If you want to see what humans are truly capable of, you should meet our athletes, our soldiers, our emergency responders, people who train their bodies and reflexes to peak performance. Thrall felt something cold settle in his chest. I see. Is that a problem? No, Thrall said carefully. But it is certainly relevant information. Thank you for your honesty. He left the human quarters and immediately requested a private communication with War Master Quinn. When the connection was established, he said only 4 words. Reed is not exceptional. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Quinn's voice, very quiet. Then what are their soldiers like? I do not know, Thrall admitted. But I suspect we are about to find out. 6 months after the proving, Anne Bishop stood in the pilot's seat of her fighter and tried to explain to a Vaxil engineer why the seat would not work for his species. The problem is acceleration, she said, gesturing at the cockpit layout. This ship is designed to pull 9 G-turns. That means 9 times the force of Earth gravity pressing on the pilot. Your species evolved on a world with 0.6 Earth gravity. Your cardiovascular system would fail before you finished the first combat maneuver. The Vaxil, whose name was something unpronounceable that Anne had shortened to Val, looked physically ill. 9G, that is unsurvivable. For you, yes. For me, it's uncomfortable but manageable. I have pulled 12G in testing. I would not want to sustain it for long, but I could do it if necessary. Val stared at her like she had just claimed she could breathe vacuum. Your pilots are insane. Our pilots are human, Anne corrected with a grin. There's a difference. The past 6 months had been a revelation for both humanity and the galaxy. The Council had voted to grant Earth full membership in the Galactic Assembly, though the vote had been closer than anyone expected. Some species had welcomed humanity eagerly, seeing opportunity in their unique capabilities. Others had responded with fear, imposing restrictions and observation requirements that Ambassador Delgado was still negotiating around. But slowly, carefully, humans had begun integrating into galactic society, and everywhere they went, they surprised people. On Trade Station Anchorage 7, a human dock worker had casually lifted a container that normally required an anti-gravity assist, not realizing it was considered heavy cargo. The station manager had filed a safety violation report, concerned that humans were using illegal enhancement drugs. Medical testing proved otherwise, leading to a complete recalibration of human load-bearing capacity estimates. At the Kelvin Research Institute, a human scientist named Dr. Wei had worked for 36 hours straight on a quantum decay problem, sustained by nothing more than coffee and determination. The institute director had been ready to report her for cybernetic time dilation, only to learn that human circadian rhythms were remarkably flexible when properly motivated. And in sporting events across the assembly, human athletes were dominating competitions they entered, not through superior skill but through simple physical capacity. A human teenager had won the Assembly Junior Sprint Championship with what she considered a casual jog. A human swimmer had broken 3 records in low-gravity aquatic events before officials realized the issue was not cheating but biology. Every incident added to the growing understanding that Earth was not a normal world, and humans were not a normal species. Anne's fighter was just the latest example. She had been hired by the Vaxil Defense Consortium to evaluate their newest interceptor design, only to discover that the entire ship had been built around assumptions of what was physically possible. The Vaxil engineers had created what they considered an aggressively maneuverable craft, capable of 3G turns that would strain their pilots to the limit. Anne had taken it up for a test flight and promptly demonstrated that it could pull 7G before structural stress became an issue. The Vaxil engineers had been horrified. The human ones had been taking notes. "We will need to completely redesign our combat doctrine," Val said, looking at his datapad with dismay. "If human ships can maneuver at 3 times our maximum capability, every tactical simulation we have ever run is worthless." "It's not just about maneuverability," Anne said gently. "Your ships are fine for your pilots. You should not try to copy human designs. That would be like us trying to copy trend phase shift technology. We need to work together, combine our strengths rather than competing." "Easy for you to say. Humans have not faced the scourge yet." "No," Anne admitted. "But we would like to help if the opportunity arises." The opportunity arose 2 weeks later. Though not in any way Anne had anticipated, she was on Haven's Edge, a small colony world on the outer rim, conducting long-term durability tests on the new fighter designs. The colony was home to about 2,000 beings from 7 different species, including 40 humans who had come to study the local ecology. It was a peaceful place, quiet and remote, far from the trade routes and political centers, which was exactly why the Scourge chose to raid it. Anne was in the colonial bar, sharing drinks with a Tren engineer named Kell, when the alarm started. Red lights flashed and the communication system crackled to life. "All residents seek immediate shelter. Scourge vessels detected on approach. Defense forces are not available. Evacuation is not possible. Seek shelter and remain calm." The bar erupted in panic. Beings rushed for the exits, shoving and stumbling. Anne grabbed Kell before he could be trampled. "What does that mean, defense forces not available?" "It means we are going to die," Kell said, his face pale. "The Scourge do not take prisoners. They kill everyone, take what they want, and leave. The nearest military response is 6 hours away." Anne pulled out her communicator. "This is Bishop to all human residents. Emergency protocol. Where is Director Grant?" "Grant here." The voice was calm, controlled. Paul Grant had been Earth military before retiring to colony administration. "I am at the community center with 23 humans. The others are scattered across the colony. Can we defend this place?" "Against what exactly?" "Scourge raiders." There was a pause. "How many ships?" Anne looked at the display screen where sensor data was being broadcast. 20 vessels. Estimated 300 raiders. And we have 40 humans, most of whom are scientists and civilians. "Bishop, we cannot fight that. We can if we coordinate the other colonists. 2,000 defenders is better than 300 attackers if we use the terrain properly. The other colonists are not fighters. Most of them will panic." "Then we do not panic," Anne said firmly. "We show them how humans handle threats." By the time the Scourge ships landed, Grant had organized the defense. He had sent the non-humans into reinforced shelters with emergency supplies and locked doors. He had positioned humans at strategic choke points throughout the colony, with whatever weapons they could improvise. And he had made it clear that the goal was not victory, but survival until help arrived. Anne found herself in a maintenance corridor with Dr. Sophie Webb, the xenobiology researcher who had organized the original expedition. Sophie was armed with a plasma cutter from the machine shop and looked absolutely terrified. "I study microorganisms," Sophie said, her voice shaking. "I have never hurt anyone in my life." "You will not have to," Anne promised. "Just stay behind me and follow my instructions. We are just buying time." The Scourge came through the colony like a storm. Anne heard them before she saw them. the sound of weapons fire and shouting echoing through the corridors. They moved fast, faster than most species could track, but not faster than humans. The first raider that came around the corner never saw Anne strike. She caught him in the throat with her elbow, dropped him with a knee to the solar plexus, and was moving past before his weapon hit the floor. The second and third raiders tried to react, but Anne was already inside their reach, too close for their weapons to track. She fought the way Amy Walsh had taught her years ago during security training, using leverage and momentum rather than strength, turning the Scourge's speed against them. Behind her, Sophie stared in shock. "How did you do that?" "Practice," Anne said, breathing hard. "Now come on. We need to regroup with Grant." They found the director defending the community center entrance with 5 other humans. Bodies were piled at the choke point, and Grant's face was grim but determined. "They are trying to flank us through the service tunnels," he said. "We need to collapse the entrances." "On it," said one of the humans, a maintenance worker named Harris. He disappeared into the building with a toolkit. The Scourge raid leader, a being named Kess, had never experienced anything like this. His forces had raided over 60 colonies and never met serious resistance. The standard procedure was simple: land, overwhelm the defenders with speed and numbers, take what was valuable, leave before military response arrived. Easy, profitable, safe. This was none of those things. His raiders were dying, not in large numbers, but consistently, steadily. Every corridor they entered had humans waiting. Every choke point became a killing zone, and the humans moved with a precision that made his best warriors look clumsy. Kess watched his tactical display with growing horror as his force markers winked out one by one. "How many humans are there?" he demanded. "Scans show approximately 40, his sensor operator said. 40? We lost 30 raiders to 40 defenders? They are not like other species, raid leader. They move too fast, they fight too well, and they do not fear. Everything fears the Scourge, not these beings." Kess made a decision he had never made before in 73 years of raiding. "Retreat. Back to the ships. We are leaving. But we have not secured the objective." "I do not care about the objective. I care about survival. Move now." The Scourge fled, leaving their dead behind, and Anne watched them go from the community center roof. Sophie stood beside her, still holding the plasma cutter she had never needed to use. "Did we just win?" Sophie asked quietly. "We survived," Anne corrected. "That is better than winning." When the Korvath defense fleet finally arrived 6 hours later, they found the colony intact, the colonists safe, and 40 humans who looked exhausted but unharmed. Admiral Cross came down personally to assess the situation, his face showing a mix of relief and concern. "Director Grant," he said formally. "Status report. 4 human casualties, non-fatal. 12 wounded, all stable. 0 non-human casualties. Scourge raiders repelled with estimated 30% losses to their force." Cross looked around at the damage, at the bodies being collected, at the improvised defenses. "You held off 300 raiders with 40 civilians." "Not civilians, Admiral. Humans." Cross was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, tired but proud. "Get your people medical attention and rest. We will handle cleanup and security." That night, footage of the defense of Haven's Edge spread across the galactic network. For the first time in 73 years, someone had beaten the Scourge in open combat, and they had done it with researchers and maintenance workers. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly was the largest gathering in 200 years. Every species had sent representatives, and the chamber was filled to capacity with beings who all wanted answers to the same question. What do we do about humanity? Ambassador Ruth Delgado sat in the human delegation section and tried to remain calm. 6 months of careful diplomacy had just been complicated by 40 humans defending a colony world. Some species saw it as heroic. Others saw it as terrifying. And a vocal minority was arguing that humans should be restricted to their home system immediately, before they became an uncontrollable military force. Council Speaker Vorn called the session to order with a gesture that made the holographic displays dim. "We are here to discuss the incident at Haven's Edge," the ancient being said, "and to determine what it means for the Assembly moving forward." The Tren representative stood first, its form flickering slightly as it phased between states. "The humans saved 2,000 beings, including 300 of my people. They asked for nothing in return." They risked their lives to protect strangers. This is the behavior we should celebrate, not fear. They killed over 90 Scourge Raiders, countered the Valak's representative, its tentacles writhing with agitation, with minimal casualties to themselves. That level of combat effectiveness suggests military training far beyond what they have disclosed. We were told humans were diplomats and researchers. We were not told they were warriors. They are both, High Arbiter Thrall said, standing from his seat. Humans contain multitudes. They are complex, adaptable, and yes, dangerous when threatened. But so are we all. The question is not whether humans can fight, but whether they choose to fight for the right reasons. Easy for you to say, the Valak shot back. Your empire is the dominant military power in this region. You do not fear being displaced. Smaller species like mine have every reason to worry about a new military power rising. War Master Quinn rose, his scarred face grave. I have spent the past 6 months studying human military capabilities. I have reviewed their historical conflicts, analyzed their tactical approaches, and consulted with their military advisors. What I have learned is this. Humans are the most effective combat species I have ever encountered. But they are also the most reluctant to use that capability. Reluctant? The Valak sounded skeptical. Humans have a concept they call proportional response. They match their level of force to the threat level. At Haven's Edge, they could have killed every Scourge Raider. Instead, they focused on defense, on protecting the innocent, on minimal necessary force. Even when fighting for their lives, they exercised restraint. That was 40 civilians, the Valaks countered. What happens when you face 40 human soldiers? Or 4,000? Then we will be grateful they are on our side rather than against us, Quinn said firmly. Ruth stood, deciding it was time for the humans to speak for themselves. May I address the council? Vorn gestured permission. Ambassador Delgado, please. Ruth moved to the central speaking platform, aware that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching this moment. Members of the Assembly, I understand your concerns. My species has revealed capabilities that surprise you, that frighten some of you. You wonder what else we are hiding. You wonder if we can be trusted. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Let me tell you about Earth. Our world is harsh. Our gravity is high. Our weather is violent. Our history is filled with predators that hunted us and disasters that nearly destroyed us. We evolved not because we were strong, but because we learned to work together, because we protected the weak, because we chose cooperation over competition. Your history is filled with wars, the Valaks interrupted. Yes, wars that taught us the cost of violence, wars that showed us the value of peace. We are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes, but we have learned from them. We have grown. Ruth activated a holographic display showing Earth from space. This is our home. One planet among billions. We do not want to conquer the galaxy. We do not want to dominate other species. We want to explore, to learn, to contribute, and yes, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Like you did at Haven's Edge? Thrall asked quietly. Exactly like we did at Haven's Edge. Those colonists were our neighbors, our friends, our fellow members of the Assembly. When they were threatened, we did what any good neighbor would do. We helped. By killing 90 raiders. By defending 2,000 innocents, Ruth corrected. The Scourge chose violence. They chose to attack an undefended colony. They chose to put innocent lives at risk. We simply chose to say no, to stand in their way, to show them that some things are worth fighting for. The chamber was quiet. Ruth could see beings processing her words, weighing them against their fears and hopes. My people did not ask to be physically superior, Ruth continued. We did not choose the world we evolved on. But we did choose what to do with the capabilities that world gave us. We chose to use our strength to protect, not to conquer, to defend, not to dominate. That choice defines us more than any physical ability ever could. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. Judge us not by what we can do, but by what we choose to do. Give us the chance to prove that humanity belongs among the stars not as a threat, but as a partner. Council Speaker Vorn raised a clawed hand. The question before us is whether to grant humanity full Security Council status, with the responsibilities and authorities that entails. This would make them the youngest species ever granted such status. It would also acknowledge them as a military power capable of defending Assembly interests. I support this measure, Thrall said immediately. As do I, Quinn added. The Tren Collective supports humanity's inclusion, the Tren representative said. They saved our people. We will not forget that. One by one, species declared their positions. Some eagerly supported humanity. Others reluctantly agreed. A few abstained or voted against. But when the final count was tallied, humanity had been granted Security Council status by a margin of 31-9. Ruth felt her knees weaken with relief. They had done it. 6 months after David Reed caught a blade mid-air, humanity had been recognized as a full and equal member of the galactic community. That evening, Ruth found David on the observation deck of the human embassy ship, staring out at Corvath Prime below. He looked tired but peaceful. "We did it," she said, standing beside him. "You did it," David corrected. "I just caught a weapon. You did more than that. You showed them what humans are capable of. You started a conversation that led to this moment." David was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we deserve this? The Security Council seat? The trust they are placing in us? I think we have the potential to deserve it," Ruth said carefully. "We have the capability, the willingness, the desire to do good. Now we just have to follow through." "No pressure," Ruth laughed. "None at all." Thrall found them there an hour later, his tall frame casting long shadows in the dim light. "Ambassador Delgado, Captain Reed. I hoped I might find you here." "Hi, Arbiter." Ruth greeted him formally. "Congratulations on the vote." "Congratulations to us all," Thrall corrected. He looked at David with an expression that might have been fondness. "I have a question for you, Captain Reed. That day in the arena when you caught the blade, if you had known it would lead to all of this, would you still have done it?" David considered the question seriously. "Yes, because the alternative was getting hit in the face with a sharp object, and that seemed worse than political complications." Thrall's laugh was genuine and surprised. "You are either very wise or very simple. Can I be both?" "I suspect you are." Thrall turned to Ruth. "The Council has asked me to serve as liaison to humanity for the foreseeable future. I have accepted. I hope we can work together productively." "I look forward to it," Ruth said sincerely. "There is one more thing." Thrall hesitated, which was unusual for him. "The Scourge. They have been a plague on the Outer Rim for 70 years. No species has been able to stop them because they are too fast, too aggressive. But humans matched them. Humans beat them. We got lucky," David said. "No, you were prepared. Your people instinctively organized for defense, coordinated without formal command structure, adapted to the threat in real time. These are not lucky behaviors. These are trained behaviors. The question is, will you help us?" "Help you how?" Ruth asked. "Train our forces. Share your tactical knowledge. Show us how to fight the way you fight. Not to make us human, but to help us understand how to counter threats we could not counter before." Thrall met her eyes. "Humanity has proven it can defend. Will you help others learn to do the same?" Ruth looked at David, saw her own thoughts reflected in his face. This was the moment that would define humanity's role in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as teachers, as partners, as defenders of those who needed defending. "We will help," Ruth said. "On one condition. Name it. We do this together. Not humans teaching others, but everyone learning from each other. We share what we know about combat, but you share what you know about diplomacy, about science, about all the things we are still learning. We grow together." Thrall's smile was genuine. "That is acceptable. More than acceptable. That is the foundation of true partnership." They stood together on the observation deck, human and Corvath, looking out at the galaxy that had just become a little smaller, a little safer, a little more united. Somewhere out in that vast darkness, threats still existed. Raiders still hunted. Danger still lurked. But now, for the first time in a long time, the galaxy had defenders who were fast enough, strong enough, and brave enough to stand against them. And they had chosen to use that strength not for conquest but for protection. David thought about the blade he had caught, about the moment that had changed everything. Amy had been right that day in the ship's cabin. When things went sideways, he had trusted his instincts. He had let his body do what millions of years of evolution had prepared it to do, but more importantly, he had chosen to hand the blade back, to turn a moment of violence into a gesture of peace. That choice, more than the catch itself, had defined humanity's place among the stars. "What are you thinking?" Ruth asked quietly. "That we have a lot of work ahead of us." "True. And that we should probably tell the Council about our athletes and soldiers at some point." Ruth laughed. Let us save that revelation for later. They are still processing what average humans can do. No need to blow their minds completely. Fair enough. Thrall looked between them, confused. What do you mean, average humans? Nothing, Ruth and David said simultaneously. We should probably get some rest, Ruth added quickly. Big day tomorrow. Lots of meetings. As they left the observation deck, Thrall stood alone and wondered what exactly humans considered above average. He pulled out his communicator and sent a message to War Master Quinn. We need to request data on human athletic competitions and military training standards. I suspect we are still underestimating them. The response came back immediately. Agreed, though I am not sure I want to know the answer. Thrall smiled and looked back out at the stars. Humanity had arrived among the galactic community, bringing with them capabilities that defied expectation and intentions that inspired hope. The future was uncertain, as futures always were, but for the first time in centuries, Thrall felt optimistic about what that future might hold. After all, any species that could catch a blade mid-air and turn it into a peace offering was a species worth believing in.